Hi, and welcome again to In Conversation With from Rachel Cox, Equine Confidence Coach. And happy to introduce you to Merindah Thompson, classical show jumper, classical dressage trainer, breeder, and all-round good egg from Australia. In the middle of the night over there, pretty much. So lovely to have you. And you want to tell us a wee bit about yourself?
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for having me. I have been involved in horses my whole life. My mum is a coach, and I was very, very lucky to have lessons with her coach from an extremely young age. Didn't really realize that what I was learning was the same as what everybody else was learning. So I grew up in a classical dressage, and I just assumed that everybody who had dressage lessons was learning the same things that I was. It wasn't until my mid-20s that I realized that actually a lot of people don't do it that way. And that was a big shock for me because I just assumed that everybody was doing the same thing. And my coach said to me when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old, you need to start learning how to be a coach. Nobody's teaching this stuff anymore. And I just thought at the time she was a silly little old woman. And I realize now that she is absolutely not silly. And yes, she's old. She's now 90, but she's spot on. And so I started coaching from very young, and I actually took up jumping because it was more fun for the horses. It was more clear, as in if you jump a clear round and you win, whereas if it's no one's opinion. And then I started helping lots of people do the same thing. So educate the horse properly so that you can stay in balance and turn and sit upright and self-carriage. And then it makes the horses' lives a lot nicer, and they really try for you, and you develop that great partnership. So that's sort of what I am trying to help people do. And now speaking to you, this is fabulous because I'm trying to help people do it all over the world. I'm in Tasmania, which is a little island off the bottom of Australia, and there's not many people here. So I'd really like to help more people.
Cool. I mean, one of the things that I found you on Facebook, as is always a good place to find. And one of the things that I really liked about you was the whole taking the horse from the start and building up the horse's confidence. Because if you have a confident horse, then they're more brave, they're more independent thinking, they're more prepared to go that extra step there and help the rider become more confident as well. And confident horse, confident rider is really where what I think both of us feel is the best end results. So
absolutely, yeah.
It's like from the moment.
And the horses are look, they're wonderful. We are so lucky to have such animals in our lives that they just try so hard. And helping people understand the first little signs of if the horse is a little bit less comfortable, and to stop there and not push too hard too fast is a really big part of what I do.
And how do you, I know you breed as well, you breed for people, so I've always been really lucky to get most of my horses as youngsters, so taking them out for walks and showing them as much of the world as they can. I mean, I have a stallion, and he's already been in three different countries. But the reason he was so good is because, like, literally from the moment he dropped out of mum, he was getting handled, he was getting shown different things. So how do you approach that? How do you approach the whole training?
Exactly the same as that. We have actually an Angus cattle farm, so we've got tractors and motorbikes and cattle, and we got some sheep, and we actually live near a major highway, so there's and we've got a train line going through the property. So they see everything from the day they're born.
Everything.
Yeah, and so when you go somewhere different, there's never any drama. But also the paying attention to the stuff on the ground, I find, is missing a lot. It seems to be a bit like my dressage and jumping. The dressage riders don't jump, and the jumping riders think flat work's boring. But I do both. But then I also combine the handling on the ground. Which again seems to be usually split. Like there'll be someone who's a groundwork professional and you go to them for groundwork lessons, but then you go to someone else for a jumping lesson. And I think that's a little bit short-sighted. So you look at the horse's expression and you look at their body language. And if you walk down the paddock, you can see if they're the same day to day or if they're feeling a bit worried about something, and help them from all aspects of their life, not just when you're sitting on top. Pardon me.
Okay. What sort of people would come to you, and how do you work with them as well as their horses? How do they present? What horses do they bring?
Most of my clients, they sort of fall into two sort of groups. I have a lot of dressage clients who don't want to compete because the competition dressage world is a little bit frightening. They just want to have a horse that they like to ride, and they train and they feel happy and comfortable with their relationship. And they also want to go, they want to go to the beach, or they want to go to a trail ride, or they want to come and try some working equitation. So they don't just want to go round and round and round in an arena doing dressage movements, but that's where they don't necessarily want to jump, but they want an all-round horse. And those people generally just have maybe one or two horses. And the other people that I teach a lot of are people with young horses that maybe one day want to develop them into a jumping horse, but they want to start their own horse and do their own training. They don't just want to buy a ready-made horse. They want to know everything about how to produce their own horse. And I love that. That's what I do. And that's initially because I guess because I could, because my mum got me lessons from a young age, and that's what we did. Plus we didn't have any money. I couldn't buy a ready-made horse. A few ex-race horses along the way, of course, because that's sort of what everybody does when you can't afford something else. And then the first non-race horse that I got, the difference in the attitude of how to learn things was so massive that I'm like, okay, this is what I've got to do. I've got to get young horses of my own that haven't been messed with and start that way. And so, yeah, I've got quite a lot of clients that have started breeding their own horses. I have 2 stallions and a couple of brood mares that I lend out to them if they want to breed their own, and a few of them have their own mares. And they just love every aspect of being with a horse. So I'm in it for the people that love the horses. The training is, as in the competition training, is a bonus if they want it. But to be honest, a lot of them don't compete, and that's fine by me.
I think that's one of the growing things that kind of make the horse world a different but nicer place now, is that there isn't that pressure to compete all the time, and there's not that pressure on you that you're not working your horse if you're not riding it ever, doing 1.10 meter or novice dressage or going out and competing, and there's not that pressure on. You can just like have a horse and do everything and enjoy it, and I think that's.
And the wonderful thing about meeting people like you, like with Zoom now, it opens up the whole world. So it used to be you couldn't get clients unless you were going out to the show and being seen in public, in person.
Competing.
And yeah, competing. and for me, that also meant being on the committee and building the courses and running the show and trying to ride and trying to coach, and I was completely burnt out. And you can't sustain that. Whereas now we've got Zoom and we've got internet and we've got Facebook and we've got crazy time zones where it's dark here and dark there, and that's cool too. So it really does. Yeah, it's wonderful that competition doesn't have to be part of the reach to help people.
Yeah, and I think slowly people are starting to get, down to this idea that you can have a horse and you can have a full life with it, and you can really enjoy just riding, just being, just doing the groundwork, doing the prep work, doing the going and watching, going out in the evening and just being in the barn and watching the meat and hearing that sort of gentle, slow munch at the end of the day that kind of makes it all good.
It does. And like I said, I have a horse who's 21 now, and he's fit and healthy and happy, and he's actually living with one of my young colts who's just being an uncle, and to be able to still work with him and have him there and have followed him his whole life. I bought him as a 3-year-old. I don't feel the need to have, the next up and coming competition horse. I have no desire to have 20 horses have gone through to Grand Prix. I'd rather have one that is still fit and healthy and sound and happy, and he deserves retirement, and he will live in my paddocks forever. And that's, I think, a better outcome for the horse. To be able to offer that, and that's what it's all about for me. We've had people that have, because my husband used to show jump as well, and the last horse that he jumped when he retired, someone said, "Oh, well, that horse could be teaching young kids somewhere how to become a show jumper," and he said, "No, that horse has jumped his socks off for me his whole life. He deserves retirement, and he will stay with me, and I'm not just going to send him off to somewhere to get run round until his legs wear out. That's not fair." So that's our philosophy here. And I know that a lot of people think differently than that, but I think for the benefit of the horse, it is way better way to go.
I think a lot more people now are looking at the benefit of the horse, at the welfare of the horse, of the not flying it around the world to compete every week here, there, and everywhere, and there's that step back, and it's only got to be good for everyone, really, not just the horse, but the grooms and the riders and everyone else to take those breaks down, to take the hack out in the wood, whether your horse is did a Grand Prix dressage or show jumping, but it also can go out for a hack in the woods and learn to be confident itself. So
yeah, absolutely. They've got to be a horse. That's it's just that they're so obliging that they end up sometimes being taken advantage of, not because people really mean to, but just because they are such wonderful animals,
and they give of their last. So how do you install this into the people that come to you? I presume that they come to you because, do people come to you because of your approach to horses, or do you get people coming to do competition and they're all competition up and they're all hyped up and you can work with them to bring them down to...
Initially it used to be competition, so when I used to compete a lot, I would get a lot of competition riders. The reason I'm not so sure about, probably, I had a few successful horses that jumped pretty well, won a lot of stuff, in a snaffle bridle with a cavesson noseband, and like no gear, no gadgets, no nothing, and they were happy to can around and jump big fences. And so I guess it's sort of, I didn't have arguments with the horse, and I didn't yell and shout, and I didn't do anything that cost lots of gear and money, and I don't have matching anything and all of that stuff. And the horses, they could just jump. And then because here in Tasmania it gets pretty cold and dark and wet in winter, probably the same as you. And so through winter, a lot of people don't do anything except stick their horse out in the paddock and forget about it until the days warm up and get longer. But I would train all through winter, and then the horse would come out the next spring season and suddenly be jumping better. And someone said to me once, "Oh, gee, your horse came good this year," just like it was magic, like just came good. And I'm like, yeah, it actually took quite a bit of time and effort for it to come good. And so realizing that you can train and become a better jumper without actually jumping, even when it's muddy in winter and cold and dark and wet, you can do lots and lots and lots of things that do help your horse. You don't just have to put it in a paddock. So the people that want a long-term relationship with their horse, they don't just want instant results. They're the ones that I think like to come to me. And yeah, some of them, they don't have lots of hours in the day to ride lots of different horses. Most of them are professionals in their own life. So they'll have one horse and they want to do the best thing by that one horse. And they've seen that I've got horses that have gone from either off the track or from, a very young age, and I've still got them, and they're in their 20s and they're still happy and sound, and that's what they want for themselves. So they're the sort of people that I work with.
Okay. I mean, that is one of the things that is now really almost certainly one of the advantages of all of the internet, is that you can now get to know that people do this nowadays around the world. It's like, we used to always think, when I came to Ireland, I'm from Scotland, lived in France, came to Ireland, and I was like, oh, I don't think there's any, there's nobody in Ireland that lacks confidence. They all go out hunting and jumping free foot walls on free. I've
seen the Irish hunting. That's mad.
It's completely brave. It goes out and jumps all these crazy big hunt fences on barely broken 3-year-olds, and and everyone in America goes out and rides bucking bronco horses and does barrel racing, and everyone in Australia is a crazy eventer, and so you have these kind of
I agree with that bit, crazy eventers, yeah.
But since the internet, you're starting to get to know people around the world. You're starting to see that this whole well-being of the horse, well-being of the rider is getting more centered around a lot of places, and people are starting to think, well, I don't want a horse that's lame by the time it's 10, 11. I want a horse that I can ride until he's in his 20s. And with everything else, nutrition and veterinary care, it's now possible. So I think that is one of the great things about connecting with people like you. It's like
that is, and that confidence that the confidence of the horse and the confidence of the rider together, you just can't develop that with a new horse every 6 months. It just, I don't feel like you can. My horses have I can't even remember the last time I got a mature. Well, the one that's 21, I bought him when he was 3, and he'd be the oldest horse that I've had for 20 years, I guess. If I get on someone else, I don't ride very many people's horses, even my pupils, long-term pupils. Very rare that I get on someone else's horse. And if I do, I feel like, oh, this is a bit weird. I'm not quite sure what this horse is going to do, even though I might know the horse from lessons. But I get that confidence through having a confident horse that I know well because I've worked with it long-term.
I think that's a great thing, isn't it? You know, there's no substitute for those hours in hand, those hours in the barn, those hours mucking out, those hours grooming, those hours that you put into all the things that, you know, make horse ownership such a wonderful being. I've had the flag up saying that time is ticking. So I guess, you know, I've always asked the same question to everyone since I started at the end. If there were 3 things that you would like to leave as your legacy within working with horses, within how, you know, what you would like to say to people who have got horses, what 3 things would they be?
Well, the biggest one would be listen to the horse. And if you don't understand what the horse is saying, get help to listen to the horse, because they're very expressive and they're very honest and open. And the difference between, say, an overwhelmed, shut down horse or a worried horse or a brain dead because they've done too much today horse, they're quite subtle unless you know what they are. So listen to the horse and learn to listen to the horse and get help if you don't know how to do that. That's a really, really big one for me. I get help in general, I guess. So for me, for a horse business perspective, I have business coaching, because it's hard to do this stuff alone. I'm good with the horses, but, you know, Zoom calls and computers and the accountant and all of that stuff, like, you need help. And if there's people there that would really like a career with horses because they want to help more horses and more people, that's absolutely awesome, and absolutely go for it. But do get help, because, like I said, I'm good with horses, but the businessy side of it, I need help with that. I'm going to throw this one out there. This is a bit of an odd one. Make your oxes wide. So for me, I see a lot of people that they start jumping and they go, oh, I can jump 1.10 meters, and they mean one vertical fence at 1.10 meters at home in their paddock, and that's not really what it's about. So from very young age, both horses and not very young, I don't jump very young horses, but you know what I mean. When you're beginning, even if the jump is only 1 foot high, make it 2 foot wide. And then it is very, very low. It doesn't frighten anybody, and it develops the horse's technique and it develops the rider's position. So if you do not have a little bit of width to your oxes, when the horse jumps over it, your lower legs will swing and then you'll end up falling off, and that's not fun for anybody. So oxes must always be wider than they are high, no matter what level you're at, and start that at a very young level. Don't start it when you're already jumping 1 meter and you suddenly got 1.10 meters wide oxer. That's frightening. We don't want to frighten the rider or the horse. We want to start the way we start at the beginning, is with low, wide oxes and verticals, of course, and poles and all the rest. That one's a bit odd. I'm sorry.
No, confidence is difficult to install, but almost, you know, it's very hard to get back once you've lost it. So it's much better to...
Yeah, for people at home that train by themselves and they have not much equipment, I would far rather see 1 oxer and 1 vertical if they only have the the gear for 3 single fences, 1 oxer and 1 vertical is far more beneficial than 3 verticals.
And that's really
You don't need a lot of gear. Yeah, right. And you can set them up so that you can jump them from both directions.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do go to a competition, the rule book says half the fences must be oxers and oxers must be wider than they are high. So you're doing your horse a disservice and yourself a disservice if you don't practice it early.
Oh, totally. And it's one of those things that, you know, when I was young, it was like, fences should be wide. Fences should be wide. You teach horses to jump wide, not high. And it's like one of those things that's kind of almost got lost in the midst of time.
It has. People are obsessed about how high jumps are, and that's not really helping.
Let's build in confidence. Confidence horses, confidence riders, confidence.
Absolutely.
So much easier at the start than it ever is at the end.
It sure is. It sure is.
So it's been absolutely fantastic to chat with you. You're getting a little bit of light there through your window, and
it's
definitely
starting
going into dark.
We're at the opposite ends of the world.
Yes, so you have a fantastic day, and thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you so much. So great to be here.